Hello and welcome. Jay Fazette here with another facilitator development tip. So, have you ever been in a workshop and the facilitator, who seems to be doing a great job of delivering content, funny, charming, smart, all of those things, and then there's an interaction with somebody in the audience, with a participant, and they're processing them, and they're trying to serve and support them to a breakthrough. But it doesn't really seem like we're heading anywhere near a breakthrough. It actually seems more like we are spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, and it can be a little bit frustrating and actually an entire drain on the room. Now, I know I have witnessed it happen, and I admit I have actually been the facilitator who has not been of great service in my early career. But what I want you to understand is this, is that when that process happens, it really only happens for two reasons. There are only two reasons. Now, the first one, which we're going to dismiss for the purposes of this tip, the first one is that the participant is not truly willing. They don't really want to actually have a breakthrough. They don't really want to have any movement. What they really want is some energy, some attention, and some support in some way, shape, or form. And there's sometimes, fall in that category of ask hole, which is somebody who asks a lot of questions, but they're a little bit like an asshole because they never going to apply anything that you actually tell them. So that sometimes occurs, and we're just going to set the ask holes aside. Here is where the difficulty really happens in most cases. It is this, that the facilitator is not perfectly clear on the processing framework. They do not have a grounded process to take somebody from point A to point B in a series of questions. And often, they're not clear about the experiential learning model. So they don't know what type of questions to ask when. So there are three, by the way. Here's a little hint. We got a hint within a hint in terms of the tips. There are three types of questions. So at the beginning it's what? So what's going on? The next is so what? Which means, so what does this really mean? The next is now what? Which is, what the hell are you going to do about it? Or what the hell are you going to be about it? So there are only three types of questions. But people who aren't clear about, number one, the experiential learning model, and number two, their processing framework, they don't necessarily always ask them in the correct order. But moving on. When the processing framework is clear and the facilitator knows what it is and is grounded in what it is, there is a progression in questions that you can tell every single time where we are going and what the outcome is going to be. And if somebody gets this far and just says they're not willing, well, that's all well and fine. If they're not willing, they're not willing. We can do a couple of perception checks about that and move on. But if we keep going in circles, it is often because the facilitator doesn't have the processing framework nailed. So here's my question to you. If I were to ask you, as a facilitator, what's your processing framework? And if you can't answer that in 2, maximum 3 sentences, I have a challenge for you. And it's this: you're not the facilitator you think you are. You're not doing the service that you think you are. You can't replicate that experience that you sometimes intuitively guide people through to these beautiful breakthroughs. You can't do it consistently. And if you want to actually stand in the space of consistent service, you need to know the answer to that question. Now, that is exactly what we do in our facilitator development program. We help you, number one, identify, define, articulate, and replicate your processing framework. So if you want to know more about how that works to create your own intellectual property, your own workshops and programs, just click the button below. You can talk to one of my coaches, and we would be happy to see if our facilitator development program is a fit for you.